and welcome to episode 37 of the Footy with Fletch podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by Anthony Hudson. Huddo has called some of the biggest moments in football history and is an AFL commentator with Fox Footy and 3AW. Hello, Huddo. Thanks for joining me. How are you?
Good, Fletch. How are you, mate?
I'm really well, thank you. Now, the footy season's not far away. How have you sort of found the off-season, and what do you usually do in the off-season?
Well, it's a bit of a combination. Obviously, try and take a break, which is kind of neat at the end of a pretty hectic footy season. Um, and and then I do some cricket for Fox, a bit of BBL, and work on a few other projects. Do a little bit of media training and do some function work. And before you know it, footy's back. And I do like to take a break and try and mentally get away from it because it's pretty all-consuming. But yeah, by the time we get to this time of the year, already starting planning and doing a whole lot of stuff, both individually and also for the stations I work for.
And your media career started out in Bendigo, but then you made the move to Melbourne. What was the move from Bendigo to Melbourne like?
It's a long time ago now. I came down to do journalism at RMIT, and at that stage, I wanted to be. I'd already decided I wanted to be a footy commentator. Didn't know whether I was going to be able to be or a sports commentator, and I just felt like I probably wasn't going to play 200 games. So the only way to get in was to be a journalist. So coming down to Melbourne, lucky enough to get into the journalism course at RMIT, and I was excited. It was good, obviously moving away from home at a relatively young age now seems like that would have been pretty daunting, but that was kind of what I wanted to do and expected to do. So it was fine. I was lucky enough to get a job pretty early out of uni just because of the way the media was, the way footy was expanding, I suppose, at that stage. So, got work experience and then got an opportunity at 3AW.
You mentioned that opportunity with 3AW. What was it like to sort of start out at such a, I guess, major radio station?
Yeah, that's a good question. I certainly was very lucky. It was actually not a great time in the media in terms of really even the whole economy wasn't going that well, and so media were actually watching their dollars. So in some ways that probably helped me because I was able to get in and do work experience and then do a whole lot of part-time work for pretty little money. But that was fine because it was giving me experience. So I expected I was going to, I'd done some stuff with quite a bit of stuff with my local radio station in Bendigo, on the community radio, voluntary radio, calling Bendigo footy. So I had some experience doing that, and I kept doing that for a little while. Even when I came to Melbourne, I kept going back home. So I didn't expect that I would be able to get opportunities at at a major radio station so quickly. But I was able to do that, and as I said, partly because the AFL was expanding and they needed more commentators and more people to cover it. So initially that was just as a journalist and a reporter. That gave me the opportunity a little bit later on to get actual calling experience.
How did your calling experience at 3AW sort of come about? Talk us through that.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'd done a couple of years in Bendigo, and that was really important because you just need to have those couple of years where, you can be pretty average. There was people were listening, but nothing like that number of people listening in town. So that was important, and I was able to play tapes, or as it would have been in those days, to the powers that be at 3AW. And I actually did a deal with them where I stopped calling in the country and I came in and helped them in the studio help producing Saturday their footy and answering calls and that sort of stuff. And in return for that, because I was looking for somebody to help out there, and in return for that, I called a couple of games. I helped Shane Healy call a couple of games back to Perth. They had it was 60 hours of racing station at that stage. So, but they had a few of the Friday night games. There wasn't much racing, so he had an opportunity there for me to get a bit more calling in. So yeah, that was kind of how it initially came about. And then I went to, after getting a full-time job as a journalist at 3AW, a couple of years there just reporting general news and then a bit of sport. I went to Channel 10, and it was after that, after I'd been at Channel 10 and been reporting sport there, so I've been on the tally, that when the AFL expanded and they needed more commentators and so forth at 3AW, that they offered me a job as the sort of fourth caller, as I like, the sort of when they had needed two commentary teams. So yeah, that was sort of how I got the opportunity. Because previously to that, the same two people would have just called all the games, because it was really only Saturday afternoon and then maybe Sunday afternoon. So in those days, it was Rex Hunt and Bill Jacobs, and then it became Rex Hunt and Shane Healy. So normally they would have just called all the games, but as the league expanded, they needed more, and that was when I got my opportunity. So I'm forever grateful for that.
You mentioned working with Channel 10s as a sport reporter to start, before then becoming a commentator down the track there as well. What was your time at Channel 10 like?
Yeah, that was a bit of an eye-opener, that's for sure. Just working in TV, which I'd never really planned to do. Radio is what I'd really wanted to do. But I guess I got that opportunity and decided to take it. And it was Eddie Maguire, Steve Quartermain, and Peter Donegan was the crew, who were all pretty well known and well credentialed. Ed was emerging, pretty much after that. He left not that long after I started, and launched the Footy Show the next year. So that was his star was really on the rise. Quarters had been well established already. He, I think, done commentary for Channel 10 on the Olympics, and was obviously reading the sport. And Peter Donegan had been around at Channel 7 for a long time. So yeah, that was, that was in South Yarra, and there was plenty happening around with the people they knew. And yeah, so that was a great experience, but an eye-opener too. And but yeah, when the chance came to go back to AW, I took it, because I just wanted to be being offered a gig where I could call one or two games a weekend, as well as report on all sorts of sport. The Grand Prix, which they were covering, the cricket, not calling the cricket, but covering cricket, and everything else that moved was too good to pass up.
And you mentioned Rex Hunt. I guess his style of commentary is very different to a lot of other commentators back in those days. How did you find his commentary when you were sort of starting out?
Yeah, well, I was probably more having grown up in the country where the ABC was the main font, I guess, of sporting coverage. I was probably more of that style. I really admired Graham Dawson, who had a bit of that theatrics about him, but was still ABC, and then Tim Lane and Peter Booth. But suddenly found myself working with Rex, and to an extent Shane, and it was much more of a show. And obviously Rex's style was very unique, as I said, and he certainly changed the face of commentary largely. And people have tried to emulate him over the time, or been sort of versions of him, I suppose. But really, time will tell you that he was pretty unique in terms of the way he did it. And he was at his very best, either in a really great game or a really poor game. The average match, he kind of didn't have a lot. He would lose interest. But in a really poor game, that's where he'd just try and be really silly and get Sam involved and act like they didn't want to be there, but really they were just creating this theatre. Sam really didn't want to be there, but it was creating this theatre. And then in a great game, like the Anzac Day game of 95, the first draw, I wasn't calling it, Rex was calling the Shane, but like some of the just best commentary, Severio Rocker and all the nicknames that came, and like as I said, when it was a great game, the theatre and just his voice and everything he brought was just so unique and completely opposite to the ABC style. But yeah, well, I mean, we and I, when I say we, it was on the back of Rex and Sam, but we, dominated that Saturday afternoon ratings for quite a few years there, and Rex was at his very best, and I was very privileged to just be along for the ride, I suppose. And we had Barras, and then we had Robert Walls, who pretty much took over as the special comments, and so what you heard on air was kind of exactly how it was, and it was all sorts of crap that went on, but it was amazing as a young person to be a part of that, and to learn just, I guess, about the theatre that goes with what we do, apart from just the nuts and bolts.
Now, how hard was it for you to develop your commentary style and to sort of be yourself?
Not that hard. I mean, all I just, and Rex just wanted me to be the straight person, so that was pretty easy. Like, when I say easy, it was good to know that he wasn't asking me to be anything more than what I would have been anyway. But I guess you can't help but be brought along a little bit for the ride, and to understand that and learn that element of entertainment. But yeah, I still, the basics of calling, and Rex still, while he stretched it at times, it was still the basics of who's got the ball, and who do they play for, and what's the score, and where are they on the ground. And then those basics were and still are the most important aspect of doing it. So he just wanted me to be that contrast. So yeah, that wasn't a problem at all.
You've called some of the biggest moments in footy on both TV and radio. What do you think have been some of your biggest calls?
I always find it hard to answer. I mean, I suppose the ones which get replayed the most, and therefore are the ones that you get feedback on, I suppose, is obviously the Nick Davis moment in the semi-final of 05 against Geelong, and Buddy's 13. So I have no worries sort of talking about those, or obviously that's been good for my profile, if you like. Not that that's something I worry about too much, but it is, and so there are those moments. But calling the grand finals through to the 2000s. 2002 was our first one, which was an unexpectedly close grand final where Collingwood almost knocked off Brisbane, and then I called Port Adelaide's first flag, and the second of the two West Coast Sydney rivalries. And then Geelong's first flag, which was close to my heart, first flag in a long time, in 07 and again in 11. So being able to call those, I suppose, in a way, was right up there. And then, I guess just moments that have popped up along the journey since, as I said, like the Buddy 13, but other close games, and, goals after the siren and those sort of things, all the obvious things. There's probably little moments of calling that if I thought about it, I go, no one would necessarily recognise that, where I might go, I was really happy with that. But yeah, generally it's probably as you see it.
What is it like to be able to call a goal that's kicked after the siren? It must be such a big thrill.
It is. Of course it is. But there's also that pressure, and you want to say the right thing, and you want to make sure you're accurate. And like the Jordan Dawson one a couple of years ago, it looked like it was going to miss, and he's kicked it out, and it's just suddenly started coming back. And Jason Dunstall actually picked it up. Oh, it's coming back, and so you've just got to roll with it. But you've also got to, the most important thing at that stage is to be accurate and not ruin the moment, because it's really about the player and the team and the situation. And if you get the basics right, then hopefully sometimes that's enough. But then hopefully something will come to you without trying to make it about yourself that will enhance the moment as well, which is what the challenge is. And sometimes you can do it, and sometimes it's just a blank there, and there's not much more. You can't come up with anything amazing, and it annoys you later. But hopefully you can get caught up in the moment, but not carried away to the point where you kind of make it about the commentary rather than about the actual play.
How hard is it as well to sort of thrive on those stressful moments, the moments of high energy and tension?
I guess that's why when you hear players say that's why they play for, flags, or those that play to play in finals. I think that's only partially true, because it's, if you didn't like the regular stuff, then you wouldn't be doing it. But yeah, I mean, you probably, if you couldn't enjoy and thrive in those moments, then you probably wouldn't be doing it. So, as I said, sometimes if you feel comfortable and you're calling well, then you can't wait for those moments, and other times it's like you just hope you don't stuff it up. So, but yeah, so when you're going well and everything's going to plan, and you can't wait for those moments. And they are, look, it is exhilarating, no doubt. Like if you feel like you do it justice and you come off, then you are on a high, and you think, how lucky am I? So yeah.
What has it also been like to be a part of the Fox Footy commentary team each weekend?
Yeah, I mean, Fox have been great to me over a decade or so now, and yeah, we get to work with some of the great ex-players and great commentators, and yeah, obviously the station is dedicated to footy, and that's what our coverage is about, the game more than anything else. So it's been fantastic, and you know that the viewers are footy fans, so we can take it to that level as deep as we can. We can talk tactics, we can provide that in-depth analysis, but primarily you know that there's the love of the game there, I suppose, and that's what you try and share, and you try and bring home to the fans if you can.
You were also a part of 11/16 SEN as a host of the run home from 2004, but you also commentated with SEN on Friday Night Footy up until 2022. What was it like to sort of be involved with SEN, one of Melbourne's most iconic radio stations?
Yeah, look, it was a journey. I know recently they just celebrated 20 years, so it's they've done well, given it was pretty tough financially early on. But yeah, and that was probably the most fun part of it initially, was just being involved to a degree behind the scenes, as well as being on air. I had to drive initially with Dermot Brereton and Matthew Hardy, and then I spent a long time with the Ox, David Swartz, and then as you said, we got footy right, so caught a lot of grand finals, a lot of Hawthorn grand finals actually, which including 2008 as a Geelong supporter, doesn't particularly bring back very happy memories. But yeah, I mean, again, it's that love for the game that people shared at the station, and so yeah, it was great to be part of that. And really, the whole concept of SEN largely came on the back of what started at 3AW, Sports Today and Sports Saturday, with Gerard Healy and David Hooks, and David Hooks, sadly, as on the morning that SEN started just over 20 years ago, sadly died, and it was a really tough, traumatic time for those of us that knew him. And but it was, yeah, I don't think any of it. Well, there was certainly no certainty that we were going to last 20 years, and there was some rough times early, but it's now part of the sporting landscape and the radio station landscape in Melbourne, and from an opportunity point of view, it's been great for not just for me, but for so many people.
And you've obviously at SEN, you worked alongside Gerard Whateley. What was it like to work alongside someone as talented as Gerard? Yeah,
he certainly is. You talk about Rex being unique. Gerard is unique in a rather different way. He just has an incredible command of the language, and can read a moment and come up with the right words around it, as good as anyone that I've ever worked with or heard. We're friends, we're good friends, and still are, despite the fact that we're not working together each week. But yeah, we had a lot of fun for a start, calling the footy, calling the cricket. But he is amazing in his use of language, and as I said, the ability to sum up a moment. It's great testament not only to his natural ability, but how he's been able to use that and create a style that that is unique in its own way, and he's been able to call cricket and footy and horse racing and NFL and just about anything he could turn. He's swimming as well, turn his hand to. So yeah, he's certainly one of the best.
That he definitely is. And a couple of listener questions. One listener wants to know, after commentating for so long, what keeps you motivated to keep going?
3 kids for family to support. There's no doubt. There's days when it's like a job, and you're like, I'd rather not be working on a weekend or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I still love the game, and I still love the highs of what we do. When you the craft, I suppose, and you never feel like you master it. Miles from it. Always looking for, hoping you can come up with a better way of describing the situation. And as I said, it's probably just once the game starts, still getting lost in the game and trying to do the best you can, and just enjoy it. And it's better than having a real job, I suppose.
What do you think has been one of the hardest matches that you've had to call in your career, and why?
Gee, I'm not sure I've been asked that question before. I think the hardest games, I don't know if this answers your question, but broadly the hardest games are the one-sided games, or during COVID when there was no crowds. That was probably the biggest challenge, and calling matches off TV. We've had games where, particularly on radio, where the vision has gone down, and you're not off the ground, so people can hear the sound effects, but they can't see it, and we can't see it either. So you're just literally making it up. The ball goes out to the wing, and the Lions hold it up there, and you've actually got no idea what's happening, but you've got to kind of keep it going and pretend you do, or you might have just you might still have a really wide shot, but none of the other stuff that you need to actually see what's going on. So there's been some technical challenges over the last few years that you wouldn't have expected going back, but that's just where things have got to. And yeah, but I suppose broadly it's probably those games that are one-sided, and trying to give people a reason to keep watching or listening.
And another listener question as well. What would be the worst venue that you've commentated from, and why?
Not that worst, but growing up calling in the country, it was obviously we didn't have the palatial boxes to call from in those days, and you wouldn't have expected to. So we called at the back of utes and that sort of stuff, but that was fun. The SCG it's a great venue to watch footy and the sound of footy, but the commentary facilities at the SCG, considering it's meant to be one of the premier sporting areas, basically the same as what they were when I started, and haven't really improved much. Pretty average. And then the old days probably at Carlton and some of those suburban grounds, which I was lucky enough to call a little bit at. But some of those calling facilities were pretty challenging.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Huddo. It was great to talk to you and get an insight into your career.
No worries at all, Fletch. Always enjoy talking about my favourite topic.